What's up, everybody? Jason Balin from Hard Money Bankers and Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouse. Welcome to the Real Estate Reserve podcast, number one real estate investing podcast in the entire world. So wherever you are listening or watching this, welcome. We've got a very special guest for you today. His name is Eric Brewer from Integrity First Home Buyers that we are going to bring up and introduce in a second.
Yeah, man. I've gone, since we're the number one podcast in the universe, I've been barred to Jason's office as everybody, his closet, so I got this great background. I've been getting really good backgrounds recently on my videos, but no, super glad to have Eric here. We had a little technical difficulty with some stuff, but we got it all set up. Super excited to do this podcast. Eric's been dumping a ton of great content on Instagram and everywhere else on social media. So let's just do it. Bring Eric in, man. Let's let it rip.
Eric, how are you?
What's up, fellas?
Not much. Why don't we just do a quick, maybe we start with just a real quick intro about yourself.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having me here today. I'm always pretty excited to get together with a bunch of guys that run around in and around real estate and lending and all that good stuff and get a chance to just chop it up. So I'm just thankful to be here with you today, to be able to share whatever it is that I think I know. And so I'm in Pennsylvania. We invest predominantly in 7-8 counties in Pennsylvania. We've this past year opened up a market in Rochester, New York, and also central Cincinnati. We've developed some relationships with operators in those markets and ended up seeing a lot of opportunity for us to work together. But predominantly, my core business is here in South Central Pennsylvania. I'm only about 50 miles from where you guys are in Maryland. Today, that would be about an hour and 30-minute drive, though, even though it's only 50 minutes. If I left here at 4 o'clock or 4:30 in the afternoon, I might catch heck trying to get down to where you are. But I've been in the business since roughly 2006. Do a little blend of a couple different types of businesses. I mean, I do the typical wholesaling, fix and flip. We do some turnkey business, sell to investors all across the country, and certainly do a good bit of wholesale and occasional fix and flip deals. So pretty active guy. We do a decent volume, and that's really about it, I think.
So let's talk a little bit about some of those markets that you invest in. I know mostly in York. I'm guessing that's probably where you started, and you probably did quite a bit of volume there. When you grew into different markets, was that mostly opportunity? Did you feel like there was opportunities in there on the real estate side, on that side, or more on the operator side? And I'll give you some context to that question. So I have a few different offices. Hard Money Bankers has a few different offices in areas. And a lot of people think like, well, you expand into other markets because you think there's good deals there, let's just say. And a lot of it was actually, because you used the word strategic partner, and a lot of it was there. I had boots on the ground, people I could trust, and I piggybacked off of that. Was that similar experiences? Because you said Cincinnati or in Rochester, like it's not like, hey, I went from York to Baltimore to DC, DC to Richmond. They're different areas of the country. They're not too far. Do you think it was based on kind of deal flow, or was it more operator in place that you felt like you could piggyback off of?
I just wanted to get some roots in Rochester, New York, dude. Like, why would you not want to be in upstate New York, right? Like, no, it's funny that you have that insight. I look for two things or two reasons that would encourage me to go outside of my home market, because I think that's where a lot of people make a mistake, or they assume that what they do in Pennsylvania works in Baltimore, and the messaging, the style of property, obviously the understanding and the familiarity of different markets. I mean, particularly in Baltimore, you guys know you can go 1 block or 2 blocks in one direction, and the value of a property can drop from $300,000 to $3,000. So I've always been extremely hesitant of that, because in this particular niche of real estate, the ability to respond and make decisions quickly, I think, will often win you a deal. So those particular areas for me were more driven or started with the strategic partnership. And then I said, okay, I really like this operator. I feel that we would be great partners. Does the inventory, does the business, does the market provide enough opportunity for us to get a reasonable amount of return out of whatever work we're going to put into it? So particularly in like Rochester, New York, probably not my favorite area to be because of it being an attorney state that's very litigious and there's just a lot of crap. So
Yep.
One thing we're very proud of in Pennsylvania is we have about a 92% success rate of deals that we put under contract that go to settlement. So very seldom do we have a deal that falls apart. And out of that 8%, probably 7 of that is title or seller related issue. Very seldom is it something on our end that led to the termination. In Rochester, we were around 55%. So we're tracking and looking at KPIs, and this is how many deals we're acquiring. We're doing projections for revenue when we go to dispo the house, and then these deals are falling apart 3-4 months down the road. It takes 6 weeks to get title. So that's just when I look at speed and ROI of time and resources. Don't love that market, and quite frankly, if I didn't have a strategic partnership up there, it might be a bad situation. I feel like it's only good because we have someone that's more familiar and obviously is able to support us with some of that stuff. So they both started as more of an interest in working with that person, and it's just like, okay, this person's in Cincinnati, Central Ohio. I'm going to go work there because I want to work with them.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. And then and in all these markets, just so we know, wholesaling, flipping, rentals. Is that right? Is
Yeah, like no way I'm buying a rental in New York. That's not happening, right?
Wrong color.
Rename it. It's not a rental. It's because rent implies that you get rent. If you own a property like that in New York, I don't know what you would call it. It would just be a rest stop, I guess, maybe. It's a long-term rest stop, right? Like alongside the highway, you got free, housing, you got free, all kinds of stuff. So definitely would not buy there. Ohio's super desirable rental market. They're historically well above, and even right now, the 1% rule. You can buy a home, be all in for 80, 100 grand, and it rents for 12, 1300. So yeah, I mean, happy to buy and accumulate rentals in that market. Never would do it in New York. And then to your point, we're actively looking at some other markets where I see the opportunity. So like the greater Tampa area, we see a tremendous opportunity there. I don't have an operator, so I haven't gone there because I don't have a partnership yet. So I've identified 2 or 3 markets that I think we would do really well in, but without that missing piece, I'm not willing to go there and risk it without having a strategic partnership ready to go.
Yeah, I mean that's a super important part, point, because like a lot of guys hit scale, whether it's wholesaling or it's fixing and flipping or rental portfolios. Like we did a lot of single family rental portfolios, but it's like you go to a new marketplace, if you don't have that operator in place, forget it, dude. Like it's almost over. We were a part of a portfolio of single family houses that we were managing. The guy decided to go in a different direction. I said, well, who's your new manager? He said, this guy in Arizona. I said, you do realize this is Baltimore? 2 years later, he came crawling back. He's like, dude, I need someone in Baltimore that understands this portfolio of projects. I'm like, yeah, man, Baltimore's a wild town. And that doesn't matter where you go. Every city is a wild town if you don't know the intimate ins and outs of the state, the jurisdiction, or whatever it is, and you can get in trouble really fast just because, like you said, just because it works in your town doesn't mean it's going to work somewhere else. So
yeah, that's for sure.
What do you do with scalability in some of those areas? Obviously I'm assuming York's your hometown, and that's pretty easy for you. You have a lot of resources. You can scale up pretty quickly. And there's so many real estate investors out there that they try to do 10 deals before they do 1 deal, and it's just a recipe for disaster. Has that been a challenge? Like when you try to get into these markets, I'm guessing it's like, hey, I don't want to enter a marketplace unless I can, blow this thing out of the water and really, really scale it. Like, do you start small and, do a flip, wholesale a few properties, and then it's like, okay, this works. Let's throw some gasoline on this fire and start marketing, start door to door, whatever it is. Like I'm guessing the goal is you want to enter a spot that you can really scale to maximum capacity.
Yes and no. Me going into a market is scale, right? So if I'm doing 400 deals a year out of York, Pennsylvania, and I add 20 a year in Ohio, that is scale, right? I'm leveraging 75% of my resources out of this office. And really the only thing that I need to be able to identify as boots on the ground in a normal wholesale, fix and flip, or even a turnkey market is an acquisitions manager. I'm really big on in-person acquisitions. And obviously construction needs to be managed in person. And then I'm establishing in most cases a relationship with a local property manager, but I'm not physically doing work myself. So I can get up and running in a market with 2 hires and then leverage the ecosystem that I've built here. So my marketing is run through here. My lead management is run through here. My dispositions is run through here. My accounting is run through here. My overall leadership of the people that are operating in those markets happens from here. So whether I go to a market and do 100 deals or I do 10 deals, the real scale was achieved for me by my resources, and the startup cost and the timeline to get the profitability in Ohio is 60 days, not 6 months, because I'm not hiring and staffing it to run a business. I'm leveraging the resources I already have, and I'm able to enter a market and see results in really record time. So for me, that's why I'm willing, because, Ohio doesn't, it's not like it's got this massive amount of people that I can go do 300-400 deals there, but I can go do 50, 60, 70, and I got 20% or 25% of the associated cost to add that inventory to my existing pipeline because I'm able to leverage all the resources I already have in place.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. We're all the way we're seeing what you're doing today, right? But what did that look like when you first got it into real estate? I mean, like, I'm sure you had the same struggles that we all did on the first deal that we ever did, and now you're doing stuff at an immense scale, a few thousand houses a year. What did it look like when you were doing your first deal, and how did you navigate this process to go from one to a few hundred, a few thousand houses a year?
Whew. So I'll attempt to give you the short version, but I want to make sure I don't omit anything that is important. So my first deal was I'll tell you about the first deal. So we had a relationship with a real estate agent. My partner back then, Craig Rich, who was really my mentor from the age of 21 years old when I started in the car business and taught me how to sell. When I had exited the car business, simultaneously, he was in the process of transitioning out of the day-to-day of owning the car dealership that he had one point managed when he hired me. And at some point he connected with me and said, hey, somewhat retired, don't really love being retired. And I was thinking about getting into real estate. And I thought of you. You have any interest in chatting? I said, yeah, sure. Talked. Obviously, I had a tremendous amount of respect and a nearly 10-year track record of if I just followed that guy, I was going to find success. So took that leap of faith and said, yeah, let's do it. So I actually enrolled. You ever heard of Investors United, a brick and mortar real estate investing school? I graduated from there. So we went down there, and it was like, I think it's a year-long curriculum. We got through the first 2 months, and it was like, here's due diligence. Here's how you write a contract with an assignment clause. Here's how you do a renovation estimate. And I remember we got to the phase, it was like 3 months in maybe. And they're like, all right, we're going to teach you how to negotiate. Craig and I looked at each other. I think we're good. And we got up and walked out like at break and never came back, and went back home and started running newspaper ads. I'm that old that we used to run newspaper ads, billboards, and we started with TV. There's a company out there called Fast Home Offer that used to be 1-800 Cash Offer.
That's right.
And we bought one of their quote unquote franchises. It was like $1,000 a month. We had a website, and we were able to use their likeness, like their colors, their phone number, all that stuff. So we started running ads. Simultaneously, we had a relationship with a real estate agent. Craig had bought 10 or 15 rentals over the course of 2 or 3 years. And we used that real estate agent to really help us get access to bank-owned properties. And I went and walked the house. We walked through it. We brought a contractor. This particular contractor was Dominican. And at the end of the conversation, I asked for a price, and he told me $12,000. I ran my numbers based on $12,000, made the offer, won the deal, got the house. Met him back there like 3 weeks later to start tightening up the budget. I mentioned $12,000. He goes, "Yep, who's paying for materials?"
Oh no.
What do you mean?
Yep.
So that rehab ended up being $25,000, and we were in a $80,000 house for $78,000. So decided to ask $89,900 and did a really good job of marketing it, found a buyer, bypassed the real estate agent, fizzboed it, and knocked it out of the park and made like $8,400. But made obviously a couple mistakes along the way there, but learned a ton of valuable lessons. That was our first deal. Then we started getting some direct to seller leads, bought one or two just really, really good deals. Started doing construction, really leaned into the MLS back in 2006, 2007. You could buy stuff off the MLS. Got a couple good deals, started to get better at construction. Coming from the car business, reconning a car and rehabbing a house were sort of the same. So we learned that. And about our second year, we were doing about 200 deals. Our first full year, we did 70. By the second year, we were at or around the 200 deal mark, and just slowly started hiring people to do the stuff we either hated or sucked at. So that was construction, sifting through. We used to get 30 buyer leads a day. Like every house we put under contract during renovations, we had FSBO signs. I had banners out, buy this house with no money down. We were used car salesmen. So we marketed our properties the way we marketed our 1996 Chevy Blazers when it sat on the car lot. Right. So you get 30 leads, 28 of them had bad credit, but 2 of them, lo and behold, had the ability to buy a house. So we take them through that process, had some really good relationships with local retail mortgage brokers. And then we started hiring people to say, "Hey, I need to go buy the homes." Then we hired 2 FSBO sales agents. And that's how we built the business. And we got to around that 200 deal mark and had about 15 employees. And right around 2015, when Craig made the decision, he was, ready to retire again. And he was commuting all the way up from Baltimore and to here, and was like, "Hey man, like we've grown this thing together. It might be time for you to take it from here." And I did. So we worked out a deal that made sense for both of us. That buyout period took about 2 years. And at the conclusion, I was a standalone owner and sucked at it. I had realized that for the longest time, he ran the business. I ran the sales and construction portion of the business. So I had to learn about a balance sheet. I had to learn about a P&L. I just went out and made money. I never counted it. I didn't sort it. I didn't save it. I didn't stack it. I didn't do any of that crap. So I quickly started to go backwards. The business suffered. I sucked at leadership. I wasn't as involved in sales anymore. Never took the time to really install any process or systems there. I was the process. Bring me it. I'll figure it out. I'll give it back to you and just go do what I tell you. So I sucked. I mean, it was, we were selling homes and making money, but I was miserable. So I started looking for a solution and came across EOS. And I was like, man, this really sounds like what I'm struggling with. And reached out and was able to get in touch with Gary Harper and Susan Harper, who have become dear friends of mine. They came to my business and helped me implement EOS into my business. So shortly after that, I hired an integrator and my life changed. Within 2 years, our revenue doubled, our net profit doubled, the amount of people that worked here doubled, and my work was cut in half. So my stress and workload was cut in half and my money was doubled. It was magic. And that sort of started, that was about, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. You'll see there's a couple books I have around here now. I've become an obsessive learner because once I learned EOS, I was like, I could have implemented this 10 years ago and I'd have hair like Ian's beard, right? It'd be down to my shoulder. All that stress. So I was like, I want to learn all of this stuff so that I don't have to go through that phase in the second 10 years of business or the third set of 10 years of business. And I've just obsessively learned. I've joined mastermind groups. I'm constantly in different groups of people that are doing what I do and trying to learn and give what I know. That's what it's, I love being on, situations like this, because I hope that someone will learn from this story that I'm able to share with you today, and a light bulb will go off and say, that's kind of how I'm feeling. That's where I'm at in my phase of business. I'm going to go in that direction that Eric suggested, because it sounds like that might be a good fit for me. And that has it's changed my life. Like in every facet, my family life has gotten better. I've grown as a parent. I've become a leader, not a micromanager. I've gotten more of my time back, which is why I went into business for myself anyway, right? It's like, it's funny, I watch a lot of TikTok. I get a ton of amusement out of it, but there's that sound bite that says, I quit my 9 to 5, man. Screw that stuff. Went into business for myself. Now I work 24/7.
That's right.
Right? It's like the exact reason why I decided to go into business for myself created an opportunity that I lost more of my time than I had when I worked at W-2. And I was like, man, I'm making all this money, but that was a byproduct of what I was trying to do, not the main focus. So now we have 46 employees. We operate in technically 3 different markets, about 15 different counties. We'll probably crest the 400 deal mark this year. I've recently started doing some coaching and consulting where I'm able to take the things I've learned over the thousands of mistakes I've made and hopefully shorten that, learning curve for other people that are going through a similar phase of their business. And that's what's brought me here today.
Yeah, I think a lot of, I don't know if experience is the right word, but successful business owners fall into that same trap, right? They get up and running. They're good at sales to begin with. They know how to make money. They know how to make it rain. They get, they go through the front door. The next thing they know, it's like, okay, I have something here. I have a real operation in here, but I'm running the whole thing. And I don't really even know how half of this stuff works. So you take that big step back. You look from a different view and be like, okay, I need to divide this up. I need to create an organizational chart. What role do I want to play? What role do I need to hire for? Inside your business, I'm guessing you act as a CEO. I'm guessing, for the most part. Like, what part is the majority of your day-to-day managing staff? Leadership? Zero. What would you say is the main part of your day? I mean, so in a business operation like yours, obviously there's leadership and managing staff. There's a humongous marketing component to it. I'm sure you have very, very large marketing campaigns that's getting run. There's so many sub compartments. Like, what would you say your day-to-day or your main kind of role would be?
It's a great question. So I would recommend for anybody that's seeking guidance on this to read a book. It's called A CEO Does Three Things. It's written by a guy named, I believe, Trey Taylor. People, culture, numbers. Right. So my day-to-day may look different based on which one of those 3 categories I believe has the biggest problem or the biggest opportunity. So when you look at my organizational chart, my job actually is big relationships, big ideas, culture. Those are the 3 things I'm responsible for. So the way that manifests typically, not necessarily on a day-to-day, but let's say more of that's the other thing. Like, I have a month-to-month, almost a quarter-to-quarter sort of behavior now, not a day-to-day, right? I read a really good book called 4 Disciplines of Execution, and they talk about separating yourself from the whirlwind. Day-to-day creates a whirlwind. There's a guy, I was supposed to be on his podcast yesterday. He texted me at 6:55 in the morning. Said, hey, got to cancel. Got a problem with my bunch of rentals. That dude got caught up in the whirlwind.
Yep. Right?
That stuff happens to me occasionally. I texted you guys today about a family situation where I wanted to be there for my daughter, but I chose that. I didn't get sucked into a deal or sucked into a situation where my business required me. I made that decision for us to do this podcast or request that this be done virtually because I wanted to spend more time with my daughter. So I think the biggest difference is that I live on like a month to month, quarter to quarter basis, not a day to day. And that's how I really judge my impact or my results. It's how did we do as a company in the area of culture last quarter? How did we do in the area of people last quarter? And what did our numbers look like? I mean, you can really focus on people, but at the end of the day, the business has one job. It's to produce profit. So on a more granular level, I build big relationships with either banks, which is a really big deal for us, lending opportunities that allow us to capitalize on big acquisition opportunities when they come along. Big relationships with people that are in some capacity in a position of influence that I feel I can either give something to, and in exchange, their friendship or just some type of association through business may have a positive impact for both of us. And then I go out and try and recruit the living snot out of people. Right. So like I was fortunate enough to hear a gentleman that's a billionaire. Nobody knows who he is, but his name's Jeff Huffman. He was the founder of Expedia, and he invented the kiosk at the air. I've heard this guy tell the story about how he came up with this idea, and he missed a flight when he was like 20 years old to go do the most important thing at that point in his life to him that he had ever dreamed of. And he missed his flight because he waited for 2.5 hours in line to get his ticket. And he turned around, there was another 300 people behind him. And the idea sprung into his head at that moment. It says, I'm going to invent something that makes sure this never happens to another person again. So he invented the kiosk that we all go up and you scan and you can skip the whole thing. He invented that. Right. So the guy's made a couple key decisions, and then Expedia, he was one of the founders of, right. But I was fortunate enough to hear him speak, and he talked about the primary function of people for a CEO is go find the best talent, recruit the living shit out of them, get them to come work for you, and then make sure they never want to leave. So at a granular level, that's a big part of my responsibility. I'm not driving KPIs. I'm not holding people accountable. I just kind of love on people. Like I ask about what's going on at home, not what's happening with our leads or did you buy a house?
Right. Well, part of that is I think too many guys and gals that get into real estate, they view it as like, I'm like a one-man band or solopreneur, and it's not a company, right? But it is. Whether you're a one-man band and you're dealing with vendors and you got culture with your vendors, or you got culture with your contractors who aren't necessarily your employees, but you deal with them every day, you have this culture. What's the one thing that you could give to everybody that's watching today to create culture, whatever it is inside their business that motivates them? How can people change what they're doing today, whether you're a one-man band or you're a 50, 100-person company? What can someone do as the leader to create the right culture around them?
So I'll try and boil it down to one thing, but talk through it with me, and then we'll try and see if we can pick one thing. So I think the realization that when people talk about culture being an option of whether or not they want to create it, you either create it intentionally or it happens on its own. But every company has a culture. And I think that's probably the one thing that a lot of people overlook when they say, hey, I'm a solopreneur, I'm a one-man band, I'm not creating a culture. You are. You're creating you're doing it by accident, right? So one of the things that I think is instrumental in creating our culture is we decided on a set of core values. And we went through that process and said, what do we stand for? What is non-negotiable with us? And then that defines the way that we treat each other, the way that we treat customers, and the way that we treat vendors or people that we do in some capacity business with. So, and then you have to have a discipline to those core values that when someone's out of alignment, we have to correct that. We cannot tolerate it, or those core values then become non-existent. It's a set of things that we put on the wall that people walk by and look at and laugh at and go, yeah, discipline. We allow so-and-so to show up late every single day, and there's never a conversation that happens about it. Discipline does not show it. And it's quite frankly, the majority of people that I've been able to recruit have come to me through social media. And the majority of the time, when a high performer leaves a company, it's because of bad leadership. I actually put this post up the other day and it got a lot of activity. And I said, if you want good people, go find bad leaders and recruit their people. They won out badly.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's core values. I think you got to define a set of, a friend of mine says that core values is the way we do things around here. That's effectively the culture, right? So if you have a culture that tolerates a lack of integrity and you don't define your core values, guess what? You have a culture of that lacks integrity. So you have to define it, and then you have to be disciplined enough to hold people accountable to those values. And that's how you create a culture.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. You know, a little background about myself. I worked for the Baltimore City Fire Department for about 15 years before I left. And that place had its own culture. You know what I mean? The leadership did not have to do anything. These men and women that I worked with, we would run through any stone wall, but they couldn't help themselves. We would go into anything. We would do anything for the good chiefs, but the bad chiefs that would come through, it's like, why are you interfering with us? Why? Just stop. These men and women will do anything for you. They love what they do. Let them blossom. But then they would get in the way of themselves because they felt like they had to control it, or they had to be a part of something because they couldn't stand the fact that the members were happy. And you see it a lot in business too, when people start micromanaging employees versus, in our company, what we do is, I call him our operations manager, project manager, Ryan, like, dude, he hits the ground running. Like, we don't get in his way. All of our employees, here's the task. You do what you got to do. This is the task. I'm not going to micromanage how you want to get it done. Just go get it done, And I think too many business owners feel like they need to insert themselves rather than saying, you know what, do it and let it flourish. Because I think sometimes business owners get in the way of their own self, and they almost damage their own culture, because they feel like they need to be a part of something.
Yeah, Ian, you make a good point. And I always ask people this question. I was like, hey, Jason, let's imagine you're hiring for a position, right? You got 3 pretty good candidates. One's really smart, one's pretty smart, and one's kind of smart. Which one of the 3 will you generally make the offer to?
Yeah, I think most people would say the smart.
Like the really smart guy.
It's a really smart guy. Yep.
And then you're going to proceed to tell him how to do every goddamn part of his job.
Good point.
Why'd you hire the smart guy? And then completely restrict his ability to use any of his smarts, right? So one of the more impressive things, and you said the difference between, the great chiefs and the bad chiefs. I had an opportunity at Collective Genius 3 years ago to see a gentleman by the name of Jocko Willenick speak. And Jocko is a renowned leadership coach, right? The guy was at the highest level of leadership, if you really want to think about it. And he was a commander and trainer of commanders in the Navy SEALs. And he said, there's one thing I can run every leader through, every general through, and I'll know whether or not they're going to be a great leader or a crappy leader. And he had this process where we sent them out on a mission, and it was doomed to fail. I made sure they couldn't succeed. And they'd come back, and I'd say, General Horowitz, what happened? And he goes, one general would say, listen, we got to the rally point, and the supply sergeant didn't have the supplies there. He was 10 minutes late. That put us behind schedule, and we missed the connection point at the airport. He's got to do better. He goes, that was a crappy leader. The good leader came back and asked him the exact same question. He said, I failed. I did not communicate often, early, or frequent enough with the supply sergeant to make sure that he knew exactly how important it was for him to be there 10 minutes prior to the rally point. As a result, I let him down, and I let the team down. I had one job as a leader, and it was to make sure that everybody knew their role. I failed. And he goes, I can tell you that guy's going to be a great leader. So he teaches what's called extreme ownership. And what I've brought into our culture and what I try and live by is a simple rule that's a reminder of how to be a good leader and take extreme ownership. Everything is my fault, and I get the credit for nothing. That is an extremely difficult set of disciplines to live by. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you, when I made that decision and I invested in doing it long enough, I get way more gratification out of the other people winning than I ever did getting credit for it. Because you have a team of 50 people that win, and you get to sit back and go, man, I played a part in that, right? Yep. The other part about taking the blame for everything is you learn at an accelerated pace. because no matter how good of a job you did hiring someone, training someone, when they fail, you have to accept that in some capacity you failed. And as a result, when you have that type of responsibility and accountability yourself, you're going to find one little thing that maybe you did good, but you had to do great. And as a result, you start to learn from all of these mistakes rather than to just chalk them up as a, he said something about an experience. And Jocko said something. He goes, there's a difference between a guy that has 15 years of experience, that it's only 1 year of experience repeated 15 times, and someone that learns from their mistakes and actually has 15 years worth of experience. Those are two very different things.
Yeah. And that goes back to guys and gals that they talk about doing real estate and they know what they've seen, and like, they never swing the bat. We tell people all the time, go swing the bat when you see the right deal. You got to get in the game. You got to go play ball. If you don't play ball, dude, it's just a whole bunch of talk, Yeah. You're only going to keep spouting off what you think's right rather than finding out the hard way to go, shit, that didn't work. I got to try this again. We're going to do something different to make this work. It's just interesting to see. And I think something that I enjoy to hear is like learning from other businesses and other people and other verticals to be like, man, like that works over there. How can I apply this to real estate, or how can I apply this to my business and make it better, not only for myself, but more importantly for my employees. Like we celebrate now, like the one lady in our office, she's buying a house. We celebrate that. We made another hire the other day. We celebrate that. It's not always about the dollar and cents in the bank account. It's about building what's right around you to be the most productive, So it's funny how things change, and you were talking earlier about like your first 10 years, you're like, I sold, man, and I made that money. Right. And then it's funny how things change over a period of time. You're like, I don't know that your first 10 years of your career, you would have even listened to the EOS system to be able to utilize it. Right. Like you weren't mentally there. There's no way you would like, screw that.
I didn't have any time.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't have any time, and you call it maturity, call it business experience, call it whatever it is. It's like you're just not mentally ready for it. It's like everyone that reads E-Myth. When you read E-Myth, like when you're first getting into business versus being into business for several years, that book resonates every way, every period of that time, and it's a different story every time when you read it where you are in your life. So
yeah,
yep. Where? Let me ask you a question, Eric. Where do you? Because you're in a few different markets. Where do you see the real estate market moving forward for your guys' business? Do you think you can keep the scale that you're at now? Do you think the numbers you're going to do less volume but potentially make higher margins on those numbers? I mean, you have, and similar to us, I mean, we've done, in the thousands of loans over the last 15 years as well. So like I see a lot of deals every day. I'm seeing thousands and thousands and thousands of leads come in from local real estate investors that want to flip properties or buy rentals. So, I kind of have my own algorithm of where I believe the market is and the margins that I see on those from those investors. Like where do you kind of see kind of the market going? And I'm guessing you're probably continuing to spend whatever you can on a monthly basis to get as many deals in the door as possible.
So I think that's a really tricky question to try and forecast. And when I think about margins or volume, I try and sort of qualify it as opportunity. And to me, I could care less whether I do 40 deals or 400. There's a certain impact that I want to have. And employing 46 people for me is a tremendous impact, right? I believe that there is a significant opportunity. Like it's gotten easier for me already to buy homes. Like in the last 8 weeks.
Yeah, 2 months, I was going to say.
Yeah, we've been writing up on average 10 contracts a week. We've been at 13, 14, 15 every single week, like clockwork for the last 8 weeks. There's a lot of people that, based on the uncertainty of the market, have just stopped marketing, potentially even stopped making offers, stopped committing to deals, and that's created an opportunity. So therein lies an opportunity. By the way, I think they're wrong. In this particular market, we haven't really seen a shift in value. I've seen a shift in crap selling for gold prices That was just ridiculous. But all of us have been in this long enough. We're just back to 2018.
Yep.
It feels like 2018 to me, which I remember in 2018, if you were like, how's the real estate market? I was like, dude, it is freaking awesome. It's the best I've ever seen. In 2019, I was like, I didn't think we could get better than 2018, but 2019 damn sure is good. And then COVID happened. Everybody freaked out. The world's going to end. And then when we were allowed to go back to work and leave our basements, the world caught on fire. It's like, no shit. You got 18 months worth of buyers that have been cooped up for 15 of those months. Those homes are still going to get sold, right? So I didn't think it would last as long as it did. And then we had institutional buyers that really ramped up, rates went down, and that was a whole, different set of circumstances. But I think, here's the bottom line. You can look at any forecasting you want, anything you want. There's more people that want houses than there is houses. That is going to certainly reduce the likelihood of a crash. I think what we're living through right now is a correction, which for me is awesome because it eliminates the barrier of entry has become a little bit higher. Yeah. Right. You can literally buy a bad deal for the last 2 years and just sell it to a bigger idiot.
Yeah.
Someone that borrowed money at 2%, or someone that had FOMO, or someone that had a tax bill they needed to try and eradicate, and they figured they'd buy a $600,000 12 unit to do that and have no idea how to manage it, right? There was a lot of free money out there circulating, whether it's because they got it through stimulus or whatever, or they were just borrowing it cheap enough. They were willing to take a chance that they wouldn't have otherwise. Yeah. Now that's kind of gone, right? The playing field, you actually have to have a deal. Like I remember in 2018, if you bought, renovated, put a house on the market, and it went under contract in less than 60 days, you were a god, right? Now it's like, well, you see all these under contract, 37 offers in 12 hours.
Right.
It's like, well, where does that credit lie? Who deserves the credit for that? We've had the wind at our backs at real estate investors for the last 2 years. Now it's a little bit of a headwind. It's kind of blowing across our face, right? So you actually have to market to the right customer. You have to understand how to negotiate. You have to be able to successfully land at a number that makes sense, that you can exit it at whatever your disposition strategy is. You really, I think, need to learn construction these days, because I don't know that you're going to be able to scale wholesale and have enough margin to be able to do it at a sustainable pace. So I think a lot of people are either going to have to learn construction or learn how to fill out a resume. They're going to have two choices. So we've been doing construction, not my favorite part of the business. Definitely not my favorite part of the business, but we're painstakingly pretty good at it. So I think that's what's going to change. You're going to have a lot of people that get out of the business because it's not easy anymore. Correct. I think you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be forced to pivot and change their business. Like we started doing turnkeys 4 years ago. Had I not done that when COVID hit, I would have suffered. But because we were doing turnkeys, all of my investors were buying from outside of the state. They were from the West Coast in California. They never come look at the property. They get a home inspection and 40 pictures from me. And as long as it's occupied and cash producing, they buy it. So I was selling 15, 20 turnkeys a month all through COVID. And I was able to operate and do construction because Governor Wolf was gracious enough to give me a waiver. I think because I wrote in my letter when I submitted for it that we participate in affordable housing. So I think that's why we were able to get a waiver, because real estate in Pennsylvania was clearly not it was not considered whatever the language was that they used, life sustaining or something like that, essential or whatever, right?
Essential.
Maryland real estate was.
Correct.
And PA it was not.
PA it wasn't. We had that issue because we lend in PA.
Yeah, so that was crazy.
How long did that last for, by the way?
Too long.
Felt like ever. It was like 6 months for sure. And then we went to like red phase, yellow phase, green phase. We flipped back to yellow. Only 20 people could be in a barn at the same time. Like it was a mess. But thank God, because it saved millions of lives. But I'm joking about that. But
I figured we were on the same page.
It was tough. It made it difficult for us to do business. But you could literally buy a house in 2020, pay 20 grand too much, go 20 grand over your renovation budget, and it went up 60 grand in value while you owned it. And you would make, that doesn't, you guys been at this long enough. You go 8 grand over budget and give up 6 grand in seller's help and your profit's gone.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. So we've had to operate off of precision for the last 16 years I've been doing this. And the market provided a lot of forgiveness for being sloppy, and that's going away. So I think you're going to have a higher barrier of entry. It's going to eliminate a lot of the entry level people that don't operate with a good culture, that don't have systems and processes, that don't truly know how to identify a deal. Right, like the people that are buying now that I'm seeing are cash buyers. They want a deeper discount than they wanted 60 days ago because they're not 100% sure what ARV is going to look like if rates continue to go up. So I think but at the end of the day, people still need housing. There's a shortage of it. You can't build it quick enough to cure the demand issue. And with the rates where they are, there's a lot of people right now that aren't going to move because if they go to buy another house, they're leaving a 3% interest rate and facing a 6%. It's a challenge. So when you get a deal and you have a good house, it still sells today. It's just selling at a reasonable price, not a ridiculous price.
Yep. Now that makes sense. There's a few other people that we've been talking to in the marketplace. They seem to have the similar feeling on the supply and demand based on people's mortgage rates that are locked in. That's going to make it tough for them to move. You don't want to be super respectful of your time because you do have some family engagements coming up. But before we let you go, definitely want to ask you, since you do see a lot of wholesale deals, a lot of deals in general, what's the number one technique that you think's working right now? I see some comments about sub-2 marketing budgets, kind of what, your specialty is. What do you think the number one technique for acquiring deals right now is that you think's working in the marketplace the best kind of across the markets that you're working in?
So it's novations. And I struggle to say this because I'd sell a course on how to do novations. So let me qualify that by giving anybody that's listening a 60-second crash course in novations. What it's not is partnering with the seller, doing renovations and selling the property as a fix and flip. That's what's being taught for the last 15 years. I started doing novations in 2010 because the FHA flip waiver expired that was offered for that 2-year window by HUD to incentivize investors to buy up all the bank-owned inventory. So I found novations when I was looking for a way to basically circumvent FHA seasoning requirements because I was buying bank-owned properties at 30 cents on the dollar. You could just go out and go grocery shopping for houses in 2010. They were giving them away, right? Yep. And I could flip them. I was pretty good at construction by then. And every single buyer was an FHA buyer. It was like the only loan you could get with less than a 9,000 credit score. So I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I got to wait 4 months to sell this freaking property. I got to hold all this inventory now for this extra long period of time. So I sat down with my attorney. He's like, well, the deed seasoning requirement starts when you take deed. Don't take deed. Great advice. How am I going to do that? So we started working through that, and certainly it didn't work on bank owned, but I started to apply it to direct to seller, right? And to direct to seller, I could structure the deal where it was a 60-day settlement. It was in good enough condition for me to sell it in its current condition. And instead of selling to a wholesale buyer, this is why novations are so critical, right? The problem in the market is seller expectations are still here. The actual market is right here. Buyer expectations are way down here because they're speculating. That gap is what's creating all the fear, right? So novations give you the ability to buy retail style properties, or control them, I should say, and create a wholesale style transaction where you sell it to a retail buyer. So all the buyers that you go out and meet with and you offer them 75 because that's your best wholesale deal, they want 100 or they owe 100. We pass on, right? And then we see it go in the MLS and sell for 130 a week later. And we go, man, it's a shame I couldn't do anything with that. You can. Right. If you understand novations, the key difference between novations and assignment, you're in the chain of title. You're assigning your contract to an end buyer. Problem is, it's not, other than by a hard money lender, it's not a lendable transaction. A hard money lender and an institutional style commercial loan will. FHA, anything that ends in an A, Fannie Mae, FHA, USDA, VA, they want nothing to do with it. It's not an insurable transaction because you're a party to to that title and you're not insured, they see it as a title issue. Novation means replacement. So I'm replacing my original contract with the A to C contract, and I've conditionally released my interest in the property wholly, right? So you go, Eric, well, how's that work? How do I get paid? I've created paperwork that conditionally releases that contract and says, hey, Ian, we agreed to pay $100,000 for your house, cash as is, no commissions. We discussed that when I made that deal, because I came up from 80 all the way to 100, I would need a little freedom for you on reasonable access, and we might settle in 90 days versus 9 days the way that you had hoped in the beginning. I've been lucky enough to find a buyer that's willing to buy it in its current condition, but they want to do an inspection. They're going to have at least one appraisal. I got to settle up with at least 2 real estate agents on the commission side. So if you look at my contract between you and me, it was like this. It's a 1-pager. Look at these documents I got to sign with these people. It's 49 pages. The other 48 pages, 100% my liability. Any inspection issues, appraisal issues, disclosure issues, commissions, seller's help, all my problem. And then if there's any money left over when that shakes out, I get that. Is that okay? Yes. So now you can buy properties at or wholesale, above wholesale, but below retail, and sell to retail buyers. So here's what I've done. I look at 100 net leads. I'll speed this up because I don't want to bore you with the details. 100 net leads. 10% of those are able to be converted to typically a wholesale acquisition. 100 net leads, you get 8 to 10 deals, depends on how good of an operator you are. 90 of those leads are left over. 50 of those, they're long-term nurture. There's multiple decision makers are not on the same page. They got unrealistic pricing expectations. They're not ready to move for 18 months. There's time is the only thing that's going to move them closer to making a decision. You're left with 40 leads. Those 40 leads, those people have a little bit of motivation, right? And the condition of the property is generally okay. People that sell at a discount, they either have an ugly house or an ugly divorce. Right. There's a condition issue. Let's face it, that's what happens, right? The people that we don't buy from, that we'll never buy from, have zero motivation, and oftentimes their properties are perfect. There's a whole chunk of people in the middle that got a little bit of motivation and a pretty decent property. The way that we filter it through for a novation deal is, will it pass an FHA appraisal? And do we expect any major inspection issues? The answer is no. It's a prime FHA or a prime novation deal. So the people that suck at sales, aren't disciplined enough to present it to every single customer, and don't do any follow-up, still close 5% of those 40 on novations. If you suck at sales, but you're just disciplined enough to present it to each and every single person that says no to your wholesale offer, and you still do a crappy job at follow-up, they close 8%. If you're good at sales, you practice sales, you teach sales, you hire salespeople, and you're disciplined enough to present it to every person, and you do follow-up, you can close 15% of those people. That's the numbers we do. So out of 100 net leads, you can get up to 6 new deals where you're buying nicer properties at higher prices, but you're exiting at retail value without renovating it and without ever closing on it. You don't need transactional funding. You're not in the chain of title. There's no seasoning requirements, none of that.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a great idea, because a lot of people talk about they don't know how to get involved. They think the market's too flipped upside down. And they're like, oh, there's no deals. We have plenty of people through Jason's office, either we've interviewed or people I meet with all the time. I want to get involved in real estate, but I can't find anything. I mean, you just proved a point that you could do that literally in any market, because there's a lot of middle of the road houses that we used to look at all the time. Like, I can't do anything with it. Not enough meat on the bone. You know what it is?
It's a wholesale deal without ever closing on it. Because the problem with a wholesale deal is there might only be 15 grand in it. And by the time you close on it, pay transfer tax, pay closing costs, you're going to have to pay 2, 3, 4 points, depending on where you get your money. You got carrying. And then here's the other thing. If it's an FHA buyer, you got to hold it for 91 days before you can even write the contract. Right. And those deals are heavily scrutinized by mortgage underwriters. So if you buy it for 100 and you sell it the day later for 135, you guys know the challenges we have. That appraisers are going to go, well, what do you justify the increase in value? What renovations did you do? I didn't do anything to increase the value. I bought it at a discount. That's what I do every day of my life, Joker. Right. So just by taking deed, it creates this second layer of examination that the underwriter and the appraiser and the processor and everybody gets all worked up about, right? And just by novating and not being part of that, you eliminate all of those second and third set of filters. So that and sub 2. I mean, I think what you're going to have right now is you're going to have a bunch of people where the rate is the asset. You're actually buying their interest rate. You're not buying their house. So I'm actively enrolled right now in Pace Morby's course to get really good at sub 2, because I know we're going to have a bunch of houses that'll rent for $2,000. The mortgage payment's $1,400. They got zero equity in the deal, but they got a 2.78% interest rate, baby. And there ain't 18 years left to pay on, or 22. I'm all over that deal.
Great.
So that's right, because to get sub 2, people are allowing you to take over their payments for an indefinite amount of time. Maybe it's easier and I'm making it difficult because I'm not that great at it, but I think those are the two biggest opportunities right now to be innovative, right? I think there's still great wholesale deals out there. They're harder to come by than they were 6 months ago. If you want to pivot or add something to your pipeline, sub 2 and Novations, in my eyes, no brainers.
Yeah, and I think I do believe you're right on the sub 2, not only in the residential space, but I believe in the commercial space that those rates that have been locked in are going to be an asset that's sellable in the end. And yes, Greeley's hitting it on the head. I think once you figure out the sale, you'll have no problem selling sub 2 to people. Eric, this has been great content. We do ask every guest one question before we let them go. And since I see some books all over your office, what's the number one book or podcast that you're listening to right now that you think everyone should at least pick up and read or take a listen to?
So can I answer that question in phases?
Sure. Let it rip.
So I think there's miraculous that I've learned from 2 different books. There's 5 phases of business: startup, perseverance, viability, scale, and succession. I learned from Jim Collins, there's 5 levels of leadership. 1, you're a high producer. 2, you're a contributing member of a team. 3, you're a competent manager. 4, you're a leader. 5, you're an executive leader. Guess where you end up? I can look at any business, not know anything about the business, talk to the leader and figure out where they are. And I guarantee you they're capped at that level of business. So your level of business will only grow to the highest level of leadership inside of the company. So what I would say is, if you're starting up, the book that you should read is 4 Disciplines of Execution and the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Because at some point you need to or should hire at least one person. And you go from being the producer to the boss. And those 2 things are very, very different. Mm-hmm. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I wanted to quit 1,000 times. Yep. I say all the time, the behaviors that created this opportunity are 180 degrees in contrast from the behaviors you'll need to maximize or continue the opportunity. What got you here won't get you there. So read 4 Disciplines of Execution, the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Once you start hiring people, read The Ideal Team Player. It's the same author as 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It'll teach you how to not hire a-holes, but you don't know how to look for them. An ideal team player has 3 things. They're humble, they're hungry, and they're smart. And I don't mean IQ, I mean EQ. Once you get through that phase, then you got to pour into 100% leadership. Leadership is Language. Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willenick. Good to Great by Jim Collins. So I think the book, you asked me for 1, and in true Eric fashion, I gave you 6. But I think it has a lot to do with where, and I think that's one of the things people make. What's your best piece of a business advice? I don't know. Where are you?
Right.
What's your business look like? Because I can tell you, if you say, Eric, if someone came to me today and they say, I'm the COO of the company, and I ask no questions, and they say, so you're a CEO, right? And I go, yeah, man, I'm a CEO. Check it out. That's rad, right? And they go, what do you do every day? And I go, I love on people. And they go, all right, I'm going to go back to my company. I'm just going to love on the person that I have in my company. That's going to fail. So you're not really a CEO, right? You basically own a job. You don't own a business. So I think the book is most best. The best advice you can give you is, let me understand where you are. And that phase of business, there's a couple different books that will help you through that phase.
Yeah. I mean, that was probably the most diverse question or answer that we've gotten to that question. Usually,
That's a
everyone's
nice
like,
way of saying long-winded. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Hey, no, dude, I got the same problem. I'll talk to the wall. If you weren't here, I'd just be talking to myself. So I get it, man. But it's, when you're passionate about something, you got to let it rip, it is really actually really, really good advice that, it does depend where you are in your business, at what time you are, and what your experience and what book you're reading at that time, and rereading books over and over and over again change. So, man, I really appreciate it. Where can people find you on the good old internet?
Facebook or Instagram. Just look up Eric Brewer. There's like me and some weird looking hockey guy out there. Other than that, I don't think you'll find a bunch of them. If you've watched this or listened to this podcast, I'm bald and slightly overweight, so you'll know me when you find me on social media. I'm pretty active on there. I love to learn, and then the most excited I get after I learn something is the ability to go teach it. So I do that a lot through social media. I just give whatever it is I think I learned that day or that night or through that book. I just try and give it. And it's created a great community. It's created opportunities like this. More than likely, you guys and me got connected somehow through social media. So I've really enjoyed being able to put out and share through social media. And it's created a ton of great opportunities for me. So just look me up on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. Look up Eric Brewer Invest, and love to be friends.
Excellent. Thanks again, Eric. We certainly appreciate you taking the time.
Appreciate you having me. Have a good night.
You too. Take care.
All right, fellas.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.